The rain had been falling since dawn. Not heavy, just steady, like a quiet song that filled the air with memory. The small house at the end of Maplewood Lane stood wrapped in mist, its windows glowing softly with the light of an overcast morning. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of old wood, coffee, and something else, nostalgia. Emma Turner sat by the kitchen window, tracing invisible patterns on the fogged glass. She wasn't sure why she loved the rain so much. Maybe because it matched the rhythm of her thoughts, gentle, constant, and a little sad. She had always been the quiet one in the family, the one who listened more than she spoke, the one who smiled to hide the ache of something unnamed. Even now, at 28, she carried dreams she never spoke aloud, dreams that once felt close enough to touch, but had slowly drifted away like autumn leaves in the wind. The house felt emptier these days. Since her grandfather's passing 2 months ago, silence had become its new language. Her mother had thrown herself into work, and her younger brother Ryan, always cheerful, always moving, had tried his best to fill the space with laughter. But Emma could still feel the absence in every corner, like a note missing from a familiar song. On the old wooden table lay a stack of family albums and a few dusty boxes they had promised to sort through, her grandfather's things, relics of another time. She brushed her hand across one of the boxes, and dust swirled up in the golden morning light. Ryan entered, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "You've been staring at that box for half an hour. It's not going to open itself." She smiled faintly, accepting the mug. "I know, it just feels wrong, going through his things so soon." Ryan leaned against the counter, thoughtful. "He'd want us to. You know how he was, always saying, 'Don't let the past gather dust.'" She laughed softly. "Yeah, that sounds like him." Outside, the rain slowed, turning into a quiet drizzle. The rhythm of droplets against the roof mixed with the sound of a clock ticking somewhere in the living room, a reminder that time was moving even when they weren't. Emma finally pulled the box closer. It was filled with small treasures, letters, trinkets, and old photographs. Some were faded, some torn at the edges, but each carried a story only her grandfather could have told. She sifted through them. She found one photograph that made her pause. It was of her mother as a young woman, standing in front of the family's old barn, smiling at someone just outside the frame. She turned it over. On the back, in her grandfather's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Keep this safe until she's ready." Her chest tightened. "Until she's ready for what?" she whispered. Ryan looked over her shoulder. "What's that?" "I don't know," Emma said, tucking the photo aside. But deep inside, something stirred, a quiet sense that this wasn't just another keepsake. As she reached for another envelope, the floor creaked softly, a familiar sound, yet today it felt different, almost alive. She glanced at the clock on the wall. "Mom should be back soon. She said she needed just an hour." Ryan shrugged. Plenty of time. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were uncovering something they weren't supposed to, not out of rebellion, but out of destiny. Her grandfather was a man of secrets, but never for selfish reasons. He hid things to protect, to preserve, to let truth arrive only when hearts were ready. The envelope was small, sealed, and addressed simply, "For Emma." Her hands trembled slightly as she held it. "He wrote this for me." Ryan leaned in, his playful grin fading into curiosity. "Are you going to open it?" She hesitated, the paper soft from age. The room felt heavier, quieter. Even the rain had paused, as though the world itself was listening. Finally, she whispered, "I just want to know why." Her fingers brushed against the flap of the envelope, feeling the faint texture of her grandfather's handwriting. In that moment, a wave of emotion hit her, All the afternoon she'd spent listening to his stories, the lessons he taught her about patience, kindness, and the way memories can sometimes hide in plain sight. Ryan watched her carefully. "Hey, you okay?" Emma nodded, blinking back a tear. "Yeah, I just miss him." He reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "Me too." The light shifted outside as clouds began to break, spilling faint sunlight across the table. Dust floated in the golden air like slow falling stars. Emma set the envelope down and took a deep breath. Something was waiting in that letter. She could feel it. A truth her grandfather had left behind, not to shock or confuse, but to guide. Maybe it was a piece of his wisdom. Maybe something about their mother. Maybe even a message for her. Something she needed but never knew to ask for. She didn't open it yet. She just stared at her name written on the envelope, feeling its quiet weight. Ryan picked up a small trinket from the box, a silver keychain shaped like a piano. "Remember when he used to play every Sunday morning?" he said. Emma smiled softly. "Yeah," he said. Music could say what words never could. And in that silence, she realized something. Her life had become like that piano. Beautiful once, but untouched for too long. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The clock ticked louder. Somewhere down the street, a car engine started. Maybe their mother's, maybe not. But Emma felt a sudden urgency she couldn't explain. She looked at the envelope again. Her name, her grandfather's handwriting, a secret waiting just beneath the surface. And before the next sound of rain touched the window pane, she whispered to herself, "I think he wanted me to find this. Today." As the rain outside softened to a gentle drizzle, Emma sank into the worn armchair by the window, her hand still resting on the unopened envelope. The weight of the moment lingered, but her thoughts drifted back, not to the house, not to the letter, but to a time that felt almost like a dream. She remembered the spring of her college years, when everything seemed bright and infinite. The campus had been full of laughter and light, the kind that made every ordinary day feel extraordinary. It was there she had met Ethan, a fellow literature student with a quiet smile and eyes that seemed to understand things she never said aloud. Their connection had begun in small, unassuming ways. A shared glance in the library over the same poetry book, a laugh exchanged under the old oak tree when a sudden gust of wind blew papers into the air. Words had flowed easily between them. Conversations about novels, life, and the little wonders that often go unnoticed. There was no rush, no urgency, just the calm warmth of two people who felt familiar without ever having known each other before. Emma remembered one afternoon in particular. They had stayed behind after class, the room empty except for sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor. Ethan had pointed to a passage in a worn copy of Wuthering Heights and asked, "Do you think Catherine really loved Heathcliff, or was it just the idea of love she chased?" Emma had smiled, tilting her head thoughtfully. "I think sometimes people love what they can't have, or maybe what they can't define, but it still feels real to them." He had nodded, his gaze soft. "I like the way you see things. It's, comforting." It was in these small exchanges that Emma felt a spark, not loud or dramatic, but steady, like the gentle rhythm of rain against a window, the kind that lingers in your chest long after the moment has passed. But life, as it often does, had other plans. After graduation, Ethan moved across the country for work, and Emma remained in her quiet hometown tied to family responsibilities and a world that demanded practicality over whimsy. Their letters became infrequent, then sporadic, until eventually they drifted into silence.
Even now, years later, she could remember the feeling of his handwriting, the careful way he had always signed his name at the bottom of each note. She could recall the smell of coffee in the cafe where they had spent long afternoons discussing dreams they were too timid to chase. Emma's heart ached gently when she thought of him, not with bitterness, nor regret, but with the soft nostalgia of a door that had once been open and now stood slightly ajar, teasing her memory. Life had separated them, but the echoes of their laughter, the comfort of unspoken understanding, and the small moments of joy remained, tucked away like treasures in a quiet corner of her mind. Ryan's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You've been staring out the window for ages. Everything okay?" Emma smiled softly. "Just remembering." "About college?" he asked, sensing the tone of longing without pressing further. "Yes," she whispered. "About someone I haven't seen in years." She could almost see Ethan walking along the campus path, the sun glinting in his hair and the familiar tilt of his head as he asked a question she could answer without thinking. There was no rush, no dramatic confession, just quiet companionship, the kind that leaves an imprint on your heart long after the person is gone. The memory made the envelope on her lap heavier, not because it held answers or secrets, but because it reminded her that life had a way of leaving moments in waiting, just beyond reach, until the right time. Her grandfather always believed in timing, in the gentle unfolding of truth. Perhaps that was why he had left the letters and photographs, to let his family find them not in urgency, but in readiness. Emma set the envelope down on the table and leaned back, closing her eyes. The sound of the rain against the roof was soothing, a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the past. Each droplet was a reminder that life continued, even when memories lingered, even when distance kept people apart. Her mind wandered to simpler moments with Ethan, their shared jokes, the quiet way he would wait for me to finish my thoughts, the unspoken understanding that sometimes connection didn't need explanation. And in that calm reflection, Emma realized something important. Nostalgia wasn't a chain holding her back. It was a window, a gentle reminder of what had been, a guide for what could still be cherished in the present. She opened her eyes and looked at Ryan, who had quietly returned to sorting through the boxes. "You know, even when people leave, the memories they give us, they stay. And maybe, just maybe, they help us find what we're meant to see next." Ryan nodded, as if understanding more than he let on. "Then maybe your grandfather's letter is like that too. Something left to guide you, not to hurry you." Emma smiled, a mix of warmth and anticipation rising in her chest. The past had shaped her quietly, leaving echoes of longing and beauty. And now, with the envelope before her, she felt that the next chapter, one her grandfather had left for her, was ready to begin. Outside, the clouds began to part, letting a soft golden light spill across the room. Emma picked up the envelope again, her fingers brushing against the familiar texture of her grandfather's handwriting. The rain had stopped, but the heart of the story, the past, the longing, and the quiet hope remained, waiting to be uncovered. The following weekend, Emma decided to return to the small downtown bookstore she had loved in college. The bell above the door jingled softly as she stepped inside, and the familiar scent of paper, coffee, and aged wood wrapped around her like a warm embrace. It was a place that had always held quiet memories. Afternoons spent flipping through novels, conversations with friends, and the soft echo of footsteps on wooden floors. She wandered past the shelves, her fingers brushing lightly against the spines of books, when a familiar voice caught her attention. "Emma?" Her heart stuttered.
She turned slowly, and there he was, Ethan, standing near a display of poetry collections, holding a copy of Leaves of Grass. Time had softened the edges of his youth, but the calm warmth in his eyes was unmistakable. For a moment, words failed her entirely. "Emma," she breathed, a small smile breaking across her face. He smiled back, hesitant yet genuine, as if the years of distance had never really existed. "It's been a long time." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of nostalgia settle between them. "It has." They didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, they let it hang softly in the air, a gentle acknowledgement of shared history. Each small movement, each glance, carried the echo of unspoken memories: laughter under oak trees, afternoons in quiet cafes, letters exchanged across miles. "I didn't expect to see you here," Emma said, finally, her voice steady but warm. "I could say the same. I come here sometimes just to remember what it felt like to be surrounded by all these books, and maybe to hope for a little coincidence." Emma laughed softly, a sound that felt like sunlight spilling through clouds. "I think coincidences are just life's way of giving us gentle reminders." They began to walk together slowly, browsing the aisles as though stepping back into a time they had almost forgotten. Every so often, their hands brushed lightly against the same book or shelf. There was no rush, no awkwardness, only the quiet return of familiarity, like water finding its way back to a riverbed it had known long ago. "You remember that poetry club we used to go to?" Emma asked, a hint of wonder in her voice. "How could I forget? I think I learned more about life there than anywhere else, and about listening, really listening." Emma nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I always appreciated how you could listen without judging, even when I didn't know what to say." He met her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, and in that silent exchange, they both acknowledged the depth of connection that had never truly faded. Words weren't needed. Their expressions carried the weight of years, the quiet joy of shared understanding. As they reached a small reading nook, Emma's eyes fell on a photograph pinned to a community board. It was of a local charity event from last month, and among the familiar faces was someone she recognized immediately. "Ryan?" she whispered, surprised. "Your brother?" Emma nodded. "Yeah, he helps organize events sometimes. He's always been full of energy." She smiled, shaking her head. "I think he'd love to meet you." His smile softened. "I'd like that. I'd like to know more about the people who shaped you." For a moment, the conversation faded as both returned to their own thoughts. Emma thought about the envelope and the letters from her grandfather, about the way the past had gently guided her toward understanding, toward reflection, toward this moment. She realized that some encounters in life were not random. Some were carefully placed, like footsteps along a familiar path, waiting for the right time. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "I've thought about writing to you so many times, but I wasn't sure if I should. I wasn't sure if it was the right time." Emma smiled, her fingers brushing the edge of a nearby book. "Maybe the right time isn't when we expect it. Maybe it's when life decides we're ready to remember what matters." He nodded, as though agreeing with something deeper than words. And in that simple moment, standing among the quiet shelves, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, and the faint scent of rain still lingering outside, Emma felt the gentle return of something she hadn't realized she missed: the comfort of someone who truly knew her, someone who could reflect back the parts of her heart that had remained unseen for years. They spoke then quietly, naturally, about books, small towns, and the little moments that had shaped them since they last met. There was no rush, no pressure, only the tender rebuilding of a connection that had never truly vanished.
a bridge carefully restored over years of separation. As the afternoon waned, Emma glanced at her watch and realized it was nearly time to return home. A small pang of regret passed through her chest, but it was tempered by warmth and anticipation. "I should probably go," she said softly. He nodded, a gentle smile on his lips. "Me too. But this wasn't goodbye. Not really." Emma returned his smile. "No, just until next time." As she stepped out into the soft drizzle of evening, Emma felt a quiet thrill in her chest, a mixture of nostalgia, hope, and the gentle recognition that life had a way of bringing the right people back into our story when we were ready to truly see them again. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she thought of her grandfather's letters, still waiting at home, small guides that had led her, step by step, to the gentle rediscovery of what had always mattered: connection, understanding, and the quiet, enduring beauty of shared memories.
The following evening, the Turner household was quiet. The soft glow of the living room lamp painted golden patterns on the walls, casting a warmth that made the familiar corners of the house feel gentle and alive. Emma sat at the kitchen table, the envelope from her grandfather lying in front of her like a small, waiting promise. Ryan was nearby, absorbed in organizing a few family photos, the silence between them comfortable rather than empty. Emma's fingers hovered over the envelope. She could feel the weight of her grandfather's intentions, not pressure, not expectation, but just guidance. The letters, the photographs, even the small key she had found weeks ago, had all led her here, to a moment of clarity she hadn't anticipated. Taking a deep breath, she opened the envelope and unfolded the neatly pressed letter inside. Her eyes skimmed the familiar handwriting. "Emma, life is full of choices. Some seem small, some feel enormous, but each shapes the heart. Remember, truth is not always about words spoken. It's about courage, honesty, and the patience to let the right moment arrive. Grandpa." Her heart stirred. She realized then that the letter wasn't about secrets or the past itself. It was about seeing the present clearly, about embracing what mattered most while the chance still existed. Ryan glanced over her shoulder. "What does it say?" Emma smiled softly. "It's a reminder, I think, about being honest, about choosing what feels right, and about taking time to understand what's truly important." Just then, the front door opened, and their mother stepped in, her face tired but soft. "Hey, you two," she said, hanging her coat. "Everything okay?" Emma rose and walked to her, holding the letter gently. "Mom, I think Grandpa wanted us to see this together." Her mother's eyes softened as she took the letter, reading the words aloud quietly to herself. A long pause followed, filled with the weight of memories and reflection. Finally, she looked at Emma. He was always good at reminding us what really matters, and maybe reminding us that love, in all its forms, is about patience and understanding. Emma felt a warmth in her chest. She thought of Ethan, of the quiet reunion in the bookstore, the easy conversation, and the subtle comfort of being truly seen. It was a feeling she hadn't expected to return so fully, yet it did, like sunlight breaking through a winter morning. Her mother reached out and squeezed her hand. "You've grown, Emma. You see the heart of things even when they're hidden. That's what matters." Emma nodded, the silence between them filled with understanding rather than words. Ryan, sensing the moment, returned to his photos, letting the adults share this quiet reflection. Later that night, Emma prepared for a call with Ethan. She paused by the window, looking out at the calm evening.
The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and lavender, a gentle reminder that life continued, full of beauty and possibility. Picking up the phone, she dialed his number. "Hello?" came his voice, warm and familiar. "Hi, Ethan," she said softly, her heart beating steadily. I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, about everything we remembered together." There was a pause on the other end, not of hesitation, but of shared reflection. "Me too, Emma. I haven't stopped thinking about it. About you. About the small moments that meant everything." Emma smiled, feeling the comfort of connection across the distance. "I think," she said, "it's time we didn't just let life drift by anymore. Time to acknowledge what's important." Ethan's voice carried a gentle warmth. "I agree. Whatever that may be, we should embrace it fully, patiently, but openly." As she hung up, Emma felt a calm certainty settle over her. The past had shaped her, the memories with Ethan, the lessons from her grandfather, even the quiet mornings of reflection. But the present was hers to live, and the future, whatever it held, could be approached with honesty, courage, and hope. Later that night, the family gathered in the living room. The envelope and letters rested on the table, a quiet testament to love, patience, and understanding. Emma's mother shared stories of her youth, laughter spilling softly between reminiscences, while Ryan recounted small, funny memories that had been tucked away. Emma felt her heart swell, not with longing, not with regret, but with a sense of completion. She realized that life's beauty often lay in quiet moments of truth, in the courage to speak, to connect, and to cherish what remained. Outside, the rain had returned, but this time it was different. Gentle, comforting, like the rhythm of a lullaby. Emma watched the droplets race each other down the window pane and smiled. She had learned that the heart's longing could be honored without urgency, that choices mattered, and that connection, deep, heartfelt, and respectful, was worth the patience it required. And as she turned toward her family, toward the memories and toward the possibilities that awaited her, she understood the simple truth her grandfather had tried to teach all along. Love, honesty, and understanding were the treasures that lasted. Everything else was just a moment in time, fleeting yet beautiful, waiting for hearts to recognize it. The house was warm. The rain whispered against the roof, and in the quiet glow of that evening, Emma felt the soft certainty of a heart at peace, open to life, and ready for the chapters yet to come.